everyone. This is All Things Aging with Danielle and Sarah. And today we are meeting with Erin Hartong, Director of Legal Services at Cancer Legal Care. So, welcome.
Thank you.
It's so nice to have you here. So, let's just jump in and kind of talk about you. Tell us about yourself, how you got into it, background, all the things.
Yeah, sure. I'm the Director of Legal Services for Cancer Legal Care. Kind of took a winding path to get where I am. I born and raised in Minnesota, went to law school down in Chicago. Then I moved down to Houston, Texas to be with my then boyfriend, now husband, after law school. And so I was just kind of looking for jobs and ended up landing a job with a small healthcare related firm, and in that world got introduced to health insurance appeals, and we ended up moving back to Minnesota. And I happened to see Cancer Legal Care on, I think it was like a morning news show. They were talking about their a gala that they used to do back in the day.
Yeah.
And I thought, I wonder if I could get involved in that somehow. And so I reached out, and they just happened to start at that point to be getting more and more calls about health insurance issues. So I started volunteering for them, just kind of here and there, giving some input on health insurance appeals and that sort of world. And then the pandemic hit, and they ended up having a job opening and asked if I wanted to come on board to formalize a program around the health insurance appeal world, which then has now evolved into our iCare program, which stands for Insurance Claim Advocacy and Resolution.
Okay.
So it's a winding path that just kind of coincidentally landed me here, and it's been really fun and fantastic.
Awesome. That's great. So, why don't you explain Cancer Legal Care and who you serve?
Yep. And sorry, it says I'm muted here. Am I actually muted? Okay.
No.
Okay, good. Okay. So yeah, Cancer Legal Care it's a nonprofit, a 501c3 nonprofit.
Okay.
We give legal services free of service or free of charge to Minnesota residents who are facing cancer, as well as their caregivers.
Okay.
We serve anybody, any age, any person who's going through cancer, from infancy all the way up and, whatever age, any type of cancer, any stage of diagnosis, from diagnosis all the way into survivorship. So we're unique because we serve the entire state, and we're not really specific to any type of cancer. And the legal services we don't provide all legal services, but it's focused really on issues that go to the heart of a concept called financial toxicity.
Okay.
So can you elaborate a little bit on that as far as like what would be considered, besides what is like the obvious, but what would be considered toxic that you're typically dealing with? Like
Yeah.
common anyway.
So financial toxicity happens with cancer. It's a concept that's being more and more recognized, especially within the medical field and socially, about the increased financial devastation that can happen because of a cancer diagnosis. And the root causes really stem down to loss of employment and the income loss that comes with that, as well as medical debt. If you're looking at it kind of on a high level view there. So those financial pieces are what we try to help alleviate and tackle the different issues that can feed into those larger categories.
That makes sense.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I know a lot of people wonder, why would I need an attorney while I'm going through cancer? Can you help us also understand how cancer leads to something called financial toxicity, or elaborate on that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So that's a question we get a lot of, why would I need to talk to an attorney? I have my doctors. That's, this is a medical thing. But financial toxicity, it plays out in real medical consequences. Just basic statistic, it's on average, cancer patients are about 2.5 times more likely to declare bankruptcy than somebody who is not going through cancer. And of those people, those cancer patients who do declare bankruptcy, a cancer patient who declares bankruptcy is about 80% more likely to die than a cancer patient who does not declare bankruptcy. So when somebody's going through a cancer diagnosis, that impacts their ability to work. Some people face discrimination in the workplace because of it for a multitude of reasons, whether it be them having to miss work to go through treatment, or that their employer believes that they're going to cost more for
Yeah.
health insurance benefits, those
Mhm.
kinds of things.
Yeah.
So that can really impact the income to be able to support them, to support their families. There are issues surrounding Social Security, disability benefits,
Mhm.
as far as eligibility, what somebody can do to bridge the gap while they're waiting for benefits to come in.
Mhm.
And then again, with the loss of employment benefits, that impacts health insurance. And health insurance really is a huge ability for somebody to access cancer care, which of course has a direct relation on their
Yeah.
ability to successfully treat their cancer.
So on that note of, do you help people if they lose their job over just simply having cancer and having to make those appointments? Or do you refer out to another attorney and like work in conjunction? Or what does that
Mhm.
look like?
Yeah, we have some information. We can guide people through what their rights are as far as different aspects that might come up
Sure.
with their employment and their cancer diagnosis. But yeah, if somebody is actually let go and they think that it's because of their cancer for whatever reason, we have some wonderful attorneys who volunteer with us, who consult with our clients to talk about, was this discrimination? What are their options and what that can be? And so whether or not that turns into a larger representation case is up to, between the client and that attorney, and whether or not that would involve fees. But we do get them connected pro bono to have the conversation, the first consultation about what things look like and if they have options to restore their employment or what other options there
Mhm.
might be.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What are some common legal issues that contribute to financial stress for a cancer patient?
hmm So a lot of it, the employment ones that just said, and it's issues. There's issues that pop up as if, or for example, if somebody does get let go, like actual issues that are happening. There's also people who come to us with questions of just, what are my rights? What can I do? Should I tell my employer this?
Mhm.
If I do tell them, what will happen? What protections do I have? So there's always those employment type questions.
Mhm.
A lot of it also is, okay, I'm thinking about of applying for Social Security disability benefits. What do I need to know about that? What are the eligibility requirements? Depending on what type of cancer somebody has, they might be eligible, they might not be. There's also income considerations. So there's a lot of different moving pieces that someone wants to factor into those decisions.
Right.
We have a program. If somebody qualifies for a program based on income and asset limitations, we can actually help them apply for Social Security disability benefits.
Okay.
There's also the health insurance aspect and medical debt. And there's a lot of different facets to that too, of
Mhm.
people wondering just, what are my coverage options? Here's my insurance plan. What
Mhm.
does it even mean? What can I do? Or they come to us with questions if they get service denied. Either they're waiting to get treatment and their insurance is denying
Yeah.
coverage for it, so it's holding them up from getting treatment,
Wow.
or they've actually gone through the treatment and now they have, a $30,000
Yeah.
bill that's being denied and they're, about to get sent to collections for.
Oh, I
So
know.
we help with that. And there's like I said, a lot of different avenues that you can use to try to tackle those issues.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense. How can legal advocacy actually reduce financial toxicity for people facing, a diagnosis?
It resolves the core issues. So if they get a medical bill, looking at the medical bill to make sure that they owe it. And if they do owe it, what are your
Mhm.
options for repayment? Do you
Mhm.
qualify for financial assistance based on your income and the specific provider's policy? Was there a violation of the law somewhere, like the No Surprises Act? Was
Right.
there a violation of that?
Mhm.
If there are employment issues going on, of say somebody says, okay, I know that I have to be out of work for the next 2 months to get treatment. What are the steps I need to take?
Mhm.
We can help guide them to know what they need to have in place, how the conversations need to go with their employer so that they can get everything in place that they need to keep their
Mhm.
employment going. And
Those
then
are
even
those
beyond that
steps.
too.
Yeah.
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 Okay. That makes sense too. What do people need to know, in your opinion, about their employment rights and while they're undergoing treatment?
hmm There are a lot of protections for people in the employment arena. Family Medical Leave Act is a very big one that protects people's job status and their employment-based benefits
Okay.
for the 12 weeks of going through a medical condition or caring for somebody, a family member that's going through that as well. There's some facets to it. It applies to employers of a certain size, like 50 or more employees within a certain radius of each other. You need to have worked for your employer for at least a year for a certain amount of hours. But generally speaking, FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, is an important one to know about.
Mm-hmm.
The Americans with Disabilities Act is a very important law as well, that cancer is a recognized disability under that law. And so that helps people to be able to continue working with accommodations, reasonable accommodations with their employers, so that it depends on the situation of what those accommodations might look
Sure.
like. But for
Yeah.
example, it can help people, take doctor's appointments throughout the year and be able to miss time at work to do those kinds of things, or perhaps to have a different workload or a different assignment at work. There are new laws in Minnesota, the Earn Safe and Sick Time Act.
Mm-hmm.
That's paid leave, which is very important because FMLA is not paid. But in Minnesota, the Earn Safe and Sick Time leave is paid to be able to do things like care for a sick one or care for your own medical condition.
Mm-hmm.
And also some, if you need to deal with safety in the home as well, that's where the safety part comes in with the title.
How many days, not to interrupt you, but like for something like that, typically how many days can they take off with that?
It depends. It's a little bit complicated how the employer wants to implement the law.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I believe there is the option to do 80 hours loaded up front
Mm-hmm.
on the year, so that employee has like a bank of 80 hours that they can
Okay.
use. But employers have a little bit of leeway of how they want to implement it, but that's one example of time that's available to somebody.
Okay. That's
Okay.
helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there's also an important one coming next year in 2026. January 1st will be the first date that the Minnesota paid leave law is in force. And it's similar to, but not the exact same as FMLA. There are some key differences, but that one is going to be paid. So that's, paid leave to be able to take care of your own, medical situation or your family members, and also to bond with a newborn baby as well.
That's really good.
Mhm.
Because, yeah, there's not a lot of stuff out there like that to care
No.
for someone or to just take off work,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
or newborn baby or
Yeah.
anything,
Mhm.
So that's good. That's nice.
Yeah.
Can you explain how short and long-term disability work and what common roadblocks do people run into with that?
Yeah, great question. So this is an income supplement type of insurance plan. So some people get it through their employer, some people will buy it individually.
Mhm.
Not everybody has it, but if you do have it, it will pay you for short term is usually like a 3-month period or 6
Mhm.
weeks. It's a short, of course, in the
Mhm.
name. A percentage of your income while you are out of work and meet the definition of say like a disability or an event that qualifies you for payment under the plan. Same for long-term disability, but long-term disability goes for much longer. The length depends on the plan. They're not all the same. It really depends on what the plan itself says.
Okay.
Some of them will go to retirement age. Some of them are for 5 years. It really, really just depends. But a big roadblock that we see in our work is that there's a pre-existing condition exclusion, which is very different from health insurance. Short and long-term disability policies are allowed to deny coverage if somebody has a pre-existing condition. So it can get complicated based on the definition of pre-existing condition within each policy. But it's essentially the company looks back for a period before the policy was in effect to know if you were getting treated for the same condition that you are now out of work because of.
Okay.
So that can be a big hurdle to overcome. But there are mistakes that are made in the way that a policy is interpreted or it's applied to someone's situation or missing something in the medical records. And especially with cancer, it can be tough with somebody's symptoms showing up early and then being diagnosed later. So there can be a lot of gray areas. So I would say that if you are a person that gets a denial for pre-existing condition for one of these policies, try, look into it, try to get
Yeah.
some help because it's worth looking into and digging into.
Okay.
That
Okay.
makes sense. And then on that note too, what should people know in advance before applying for like Social Security disability insurance?
The big one is the income limitation. So there is, I'm not off the top of my head exactly. I don't have the number, but it's
Sure.
about 1,200 or so.
Okay.
$1,200 per month that you, if you earn above that number, you will automatically be disqualified for Social Security disability benefits. Because what Social Security is looking at is basically like, are you able to work right now?
Right.
And that's kind of their number threshold that they set, where if you make above that number, you are showing that you are currently capable of working. So that is a hard and fast line. If you make above that, there's nothing you can do to change their mind about your eligibility.
Okay.
What if they're like too sick to work? Does that count or not necessarily? You know what I mean? And I know that that's
Mhm.
very complicated because somebody would have to deem, I'm sure, a doctor like, nope, they can't work. But how do you prove that?
Mhm. Great question. So there's the income, the number portion of the eligibility guidelines, and then there's the medical side of it, your actual diagnosis. And Social Security has a big listing of all these different conditions that do qualify for SSDI, Social Security disability benefits. And that's what they use to determine if you meet the medical eligibility.
Okay.
So a lot of, and I don't, this is general, this is
Mhm.
not for everybody, but a lot of stage 1 cancers likely are not going to meet that qualification because most of the times, medically speaking, you can still work. And it's when I say work, Social Security is trying to determine if you're able, if you're going to be out of work for at least a year.
Oh,
Not 6 months, not 9 months, but
A
a year.
year.
That's what they're trying to figure out. A year or more.
okay.
A lot of stage 4 cancer diagnoses will most likely meet that definition, because just medically speaking, that's most people are going to be out of work for at least a year.
Sure. And then do they have
So-
to reach that, precipice of they still have, even though it's stage 4, like they have to, be out of work for a year before they can lean on that or not
Nope.
necessarily with that? Okay.
Yep, right. So with the income portion of it, Social Security is only going to look at your last. You only have to show them one pay period that you're making under
Okay.
that,
Oh, I see.
that monthly income limit.
Okay.
And those numbers are available online. They change every year, so you can find that information up to date online all the time.
Okay.
So they're going to look at the one last pay period there. Then they're also going to look at your medical records. They gather medical records from your providers, and that's where they're going to look at your diagnosis.
Mhm.
Some diagnoses are automatically qualifying. They just need to see the diagnosis, and that's it. But sometimes they need to look at what your doctors are saying about your abilities to do daily functions, your work abilities. So it's what we tell our clients is that it's really important to communicate to your doctor about all the difficulties you're having. If it's difficult to eat, if brain fog is a big thing, being able to walk around, whatever is difficult on a daily or weekly or monthly basis, it's great to communicate that because
Yeah.
that's what Social Security will also look at in a lot of cases.
Okay.
What legal advice on that note do you have for patients that are dealing with denied claims or coverage gaps?
Sure, for health insurance,
Mhm.
don't take it at its face value. There are a lot of denied claims that should not be denied. And a lot of this stuff happens because of automation these days is what we're seeing more and more of. So it kind of, and cancer does not fit neatly into a box very well. So there are a lot of things that slip through the cracks, and depending on the insurance company, some have a higher rate of denial overturns on appeal, some have lower, but I'd say it's always worth looking into. And depending on the issue of why it was denied, there are a lot of different avenues you can take to try to overcome that denial. And then also, if you can't overcome the denial, there may be some billing options with the provider that you can consider as well,
Mhm.
like financial assistance. You might be eligible for a full discount or partial discount based on your income and assets.
Okay.
There are protections under Minnesota law for billing disputes now.
Sure.
So there are a lot of different options. I think the Minnesota Attorney General's office has some really great information on the new Minnesota Debt Fairness Act that was just passed. That can be really helpful for people who end up with a bill after they go through the appeals process and still end up being billed. The Minnesota Attorney General's office has great information about different protections available.
That's great. Yeah. Let's talk about medical debt. So, how could they protect themselves from the debt or collections or garnishments or anything like that?
Yeah, so the law that I just mentioned, the Minnesota Debt Fairness Act, it has a lot of different protections depending on a situation. So a big portion that was passed was prior to this law, spouses were responsible for each other's medical debts. So if I were to pass away, my husband would be liable for my medical debt. That's no longer the case, which is it's huge and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So if you are a spouse that's receiving a bill for your deceased spouse or partner, you should not be in most cases, and so that's a big protection to know about, and that can be addressed either contacting the billing department of the provider that you're getting it from, or contacting the Minnesota Attorney General's office to help get it resolved. That's a big one. There are garnishment protections in the new law that, again, the Attorney General's office can help out with and help. Their website has a lot of information to know if it would be helpful in your particular situation. And again, the financial assistance, I think a lot of people don't know about financial assistance availability. There's a wonderful organization called Dollar4. Their website is dollarfor.org, and they actually can help apply. Well, first they'll screen you to see if you are probably eligible for financial assistance, and then help you do the application.
Oh, wow.
They're wonderful, and they've gotten a lot of people to
And that's
get there.
a free service.
It's a free service. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've referred a lot of our clients over to them because it can be tricky to navigate financial assistance applications, and sometimes there's a couple layers of financial assistance where maybe you're not eligible on the face of it, but if the portion of your debt exceeds a certain ratio of your monthly or yearly income, you might be eligible based on that secondary condition. So they can kind of help guide through those options too.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome.
I love this.
Yeah.
What does your process look like when you're working with new clients to kind of walk them through literally like, okay, you're obviously interviewing them, getting to know them a little bit and trying to figure out what their situation is. But what does that process typically look like for, your typical person coming in?
So we have clients contact us by phone, email, and we also have an intake form on our website where we usually get a little bit of information up front when they kind of tell us a bit, I need help with estate planning, or I'm not sure where to start. So we try to meet our clients where they are at the beginning. For somebody who calls in with a very specific question, we talk about that issue and get as much information as we can that would be relevant to figuring out what the issue is, what next steps can be, what resources there are. If there's a person who calls us and isn't really sure what they need, they just are kind of wondering, like, where do I start?
Right.
We'll talk more generalities of here are things to consider. What is your situation for estate planning look like? Do you have questions with that? Do you have bills that are outstanding? We'll kind of ask those general introductory questions to see if there's anything that they might not know is an issue right now or might happen down the road.
To prepare.
Just to prepare for them so that they know that there's support available if that is to come up.
Oh, that's super helpful.
Yeah.
What type of professionals do you typically collaborate with to support, your clients navigating like social workers, financial planners, etc.?
We have really great partners. So we work a lot with social workers within the healthcare systems that connect us with patients who, they go to their appointments and they meet with social workers and they're identifying a lot of different issues. And we're one of the resources that their social workers will connect them to for whatever issue they come with. We also do a lot of community education events that, different cancer support groups are involved in through the social workers. Also, different community partners. There's a lot of cancer support groups around the state, and we like to stay connected with them to, they might have somebody where they know about our services and will send them to us, and likewise, because there's so much that goes on in a cancer diagnosis that isn't just legal, but mental health, family support. So we try to stay connected as best as we can with all the other groups out there. To you never know where somebody's going to enter into the world of cancer and what they might need. So it's great to have that network and net of support.
Yeah.
So we work a lot with them. Some providers directly, like physicians, will be connected with that are aware of us. And then legal aid organizations. Since we have a foot in the medical world and a foot in the legal world, we work a lot with legal aid organizations as well. Sometimes we can't help with a situation, and it's best for our client to go speak with the legal aid organization for an issue that we don't directly help out with.
Sure.
So we work with them a lot as well.
That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. What's one piece of advice that you would give a newly diagnosed client that's diagnosed with cancer?
I would say don't be afraid to reach out to us. We did a study a couple years ago through a grant with the Shavlik Foundation, and we learned that a lot of cancer patients would have liked to know about us at the beginning of their diagnosis before things pop up.
Yep.
And I know that it can be intimidating to talk to an attorney or reach out, especially when you're going through this whole whirlwind of your diagnosis. But we're normal people.
Yeah.
Just give us a call, and even if you don't know what you don't know, we can start from there and figure out what could be helpful, and just be in the background as a support to know that we're here at the very least.
Yeah.
So do you just, kind of a random question, but do you also then work with, like, for instance, Minnesota Oncology as well? Are you kind of connected with them too, or?
Through their social workers. Yeah, we
I
communicate with them a lot.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've been doing, Minnesota Hospice, getting connected with them. All those different aspects that somebody goes through on their cancer journey. Just connecting with different organizations and working with, across the state and in the metro area.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's just so vast.
People only know what they know. And
Exactly.
There's so much that they don't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is really the reason that Danielle and I wanted to also come up with this podcast, because, on our journey too, not to get too into the weeds, but there is so much that we offer, to our clients, or to help them, connect them with the right people that so many people just really don't know about.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
all those resources we like to have in our back pocket because you just never.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, we get calls from clients that say, I heard about you because my sister's friend was going through this, and you never know
how they find you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there any like resources you would recommend for someone that needs like a low cost POA or anything like that? Like if they can't afford
representation.
Yeah. Minnesota, I think, has a great support system for that. There's a lot of do-it-yourself options, like for healthcare directive, power of attorney, through a website called Law Help MN, LAWHELPMN.org. They have a lot of different areas of legal information, but they do specifically have a do-it-yourself power of attorney and healthcare directive. And again, a lot of different areas of law and they organize it very well according to the topics you might be interested in or need help with. There's also a directory on there of different organizations that can provide direct services, like the legal aid organizations. And each organization has its eligibility guidelines, and everyone's different. So, but generally speaking, for having lower resources, those Law Help MN is a great place to start to try to find resources that are out there.
Okay.
That's really great.
Yeah.
And then on that note too, how can someone get in touch with your office if they need help? What are the best ways for them to get in touch with you?
Sure. So our website is a great place to start to look around to see if if you want more information about what we do specifically. There's an intake form right there on the front page at the top banner. You can just click on a link and it gets your information. Somebody reaches out to you pretty quickly.
Okay.
Or you can call our number at 651-917-9000
Okay.
and then just leave a message and someone gets back to you pretty quickly.
And then what is the website again?
It's cancerlegalcare.org.
Perfect.
Okay. Is there anything that we did not cover that you would want to tell, people listening?
I think just that recognizing that a cancer diagnosis opens up a whole world that most people don't know exists. There's the medical stuff you have to learn, and then all of a sudden there's the non-medical stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of blown away all the time at what our clients grapple with all the time and what they take on their shoulders on top of just the medical stuff.
Yeah.
So I would say for caregivers in particular, it's wonderful that caregivers can be there to support people going through a cancer diagnosis. And for somebody who is going, if you're diagnosed yourself, and you're comfortable reaching out to a caregiver, that can be a huge, huge difference in taking and shouldering that huge load. And we are here to be part of that. However, if somebody wants some help,
Yeah.
because I know it's a lot. It really is a lot.
Well, yeah, and even this opens up a whole new world because, having, dealing with a diagnosis and all even like the mental health that comes with it, let alone financial,
Right.
it's
Stress.
it's very stressful. Yeah.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what a great service that you offer.
Thank
And
you.
it's been such a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah,
It's an
absolutely.
honor to have you
Thank
with
you.
us. Thank you so much for taking
Yeah.
the time.
Thank
today.
you.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Yes.
Same. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye, guys.